escalating his threats against Iran, vowing to hit the country's energy sites and infrastructure if a deal is not reached to open the Strait of Hormuz by Tuesday. These plants supply power for millions of civilians and would mark a significant escalation in the war. And we're joined now by retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and former JAG lawyer Dan Maurer. He's now an assistant professor of law at Ohio Northern University. Colonel Maurer, thanks so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. From your perspective, what does the law say when it comes to attacks on targets like this, energy infrastructure?
Right. So the first thing to know is that attacks on infrastructure are not per se war crimes. That's a common misperception. Infrastructure is often attacked, and there are often legitimate military reasons for doing so. So a bridge could be fair game. A power plant could be fair game. Even a dam could be fair game. The problem is, most of this is usually civilian infrastructure only used for civilian purposes. The general legal rule is that that is off limits. It's protected, cannot attack it. But when it is at the same time being used in a way that provides a contribution to the adversarial enemy's forces in some way, and by attacking it, we get a military advantage from it, it becomes a lawful military objective. But it has to meet those two prongs first. And then even if you are able to legally attack it, because it makes an effective contribution to the enemy's military and because attacking it gives us an advantage, the attack we launch still has to be proportionate, which means the anticipated collateral harm, damage that we would cause can't be excessive in relation to the concrete military advantage that we think we're going to get from it. That's a calculation that's hard to make. There's no bright line, rule that says if more than this, then it's proportionate. It's a judgment call that commanders have to make. And because these kinds of targets are so high visibility, so high risk, there's so much at stake, that decision to strike those kinds of targets is usually held at a very, very high level of command. We're thinking, 4-star admirals and generals, if not withheld to the Secretary of Defense or the President himself. That's how important these strikes are and how dangerous it is, how close it is to committing a war crime if you don't do it right. And every single target has to have that analysis. It's not just a blanket, all bridges, all power plants, whatever. Every single potential target has to go through that analysis. And that's why we have JAGs on the staff of these commanders to help them think through those problems.
Right, so those JAGs, like your former job, you would sit with those commanders and walk them through essentially the particulars that you just, the grand points that you just made, but the particulars in this situation to help them assess if that's that's a legal move or not, right?
That's right, and facts matter, as with everything in the law, facts matter. And even if you can attack it under the circumstances, you still have to take feasible precautions to make sure that you are limiting collateral damage. That means you might have to adjust the time of day or night when you drop a bomb, if it's going to be a bomb. You can change the angle of attack. You can change where it strikes on the ground. You can change where does it detonate above ground or below ground. What kind of weapon is it going to be used? All these are factors that the command has at its discretion to mitigate the potential civilian harm. And that is the primary point of the Geneva Conventions, the body of law of war that we signed back in 1949, along with every other civilized country, that we're supposed to be following in this kind of war and any kind of conflict.
And I'm curious where the line gets drawn between you take something like what we've seen Russia do with Ukraine's energy infrastructure and how they've gone about that, and then what Trump is suggesting and how those might be similar or different.
Right. Well, one of the reasons we teach the law of war and rules of engagement that implement law of war to our soldiers
with Ukraine's energy infrastructure and how they've gone about that. And then what Trump...
We are treating their civilians. We want our prisoners of war, if they're captured, to be treated with respect and dignity according to Geneva Conventions, so that we do that to them. And if we see one party like Russia engaging in clear law of war violations, and we don't condemn it, we look like we're advancing that idea, that we're protecting it, that we're enforcing it by silence. And then when our leadership comes out with statements as blanket as we saw this morning that seem to make no distinction between military dual-use kind of civilian objects and pure civilian objects, it seems like we're adopting the same kind of there are no rules in warfare kind of mentality and philosophy, and that is just not, one, the moral right answer, and not the legal right answer. And I have trust and confidence in the chain of command because they've been doing it for a quarter century now in the global war on terror, following the law of war, listening to the legal advice of their JAGs, and obeying the law of war because it is the right thing to do and it's pretty clear cut. We don't want to be creating war criminals in our ranks. So I'm hopeful, I'm confident, I'm hopeful that our senior commanders, if they are given the task and given the mission to start attacking various parts of the infrastructure, we're not going to go Russian mode on it. We're going to take our care and deliberate thinking and analysis of each and every possible target according to the laws of war.
All right, Colonel Dan Maurer, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.